Divi Nation, thank you for joining us in this live stream. Today we'll show you how to recreate the elegant themes drop-down menu in Divi. So we'll use the Divi theme builder. We'll also use the second free theme builder pack, which you are able to access by clicking on the link in the description below. And if you're not an Elegant Themes member yet, make sure that you check out Divi. I've mentioned a link to the product page where you can go ahead and discover everything for yourself. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so I just want to say hi to everyone on YouTube and on Facebook. I'm excited for you guys to follow along and hopefully learn from this tutorial and be able to set up something really beautiful. Now let's get started with it. So over here I have a WordPress website going on, and I've created the drop-down menu that you can find on elegantthemes.com. And over here we have the original. So over here I'm on Elegant Themes website, and if I hover this, these menu items show up. Now on our end within our Divi website, that'll be the same. So over here you have an outcome of what you can expect, and we have the exact same result on smaller screen sizes as well. So if I click this, I'll have these items appear and I can toggle between the different items. And the same goes for the Elegant Themes website. We have the same kind of experience going on. So we'll build this using Divi's built-in modules, and we'll also combine it with a bit of code to place all of our modules that we built inside the WordPress menu. So everything we'll create visually will be within the Divi builder, and then in the next part of that tutorial, so we'll use some code to place those items inside the menu. If you guys have any questions in the meantime, make sure to leave a comment and I'll be checking on those. And let's get to it. All right, so the first part of this tutorial is dedicated to the menu. Over here we have a few menu items. If I go to this website over here and go to the menu in the appearance settings, you can see that I've set up a primary menu, so go ahead and do that if you haven't done that already. I'm working on a website that has the standard navigation going on at this point. And the first part is adding some CSS classes to the menu items that you want to contain a drop-down menu. So we'll start off with 3 drop-down menus, but at the end of this tutorial, I'll also explain how you can create more than that. Now, over here in the screen options, at the top that I just toggled, you'll have to make sure that the CSS classes are enabled. Now, then you get to pick 3 menu items that you want to add the drop-downs to. So I'll just make it simple. I'll add one to the Divi menu item, products and contacts. So I'll need to add 2 CSS classes. The first one is first level, and then the second one, so I'll add a space between them. And the second one is first level 1. Now for the second item, I'm just going to copy these 2. I'll add them and I'll change the 1 into 2. So these have to be consecutive. And for the third one, I'll change the last number to 3. All right. Now in the next part of this tutorial, we'll build the global header inside the Divi theme builder. And I'm just going to save my menu over here. So very important that you do that before moving on to the next part, which is creating the custom header. And for that, I'm going to go to the Divi theme builder. So let me just wait for it to load. And so over here we have this post template that's part of the second theme builder pack that you are able to download for free. And you can access it in the description below. So there'll be a link where you can go ahead and grab this theme builder pack, and it works really well with the menu because it's also part of the design style of Elegant Themes. All right, so over here we are in the theme builder, and you can choose whether you want to apply this technique on a custom header or a global header. We'll apply to a global header here, for instance. So I'll start building the global header inside a template editor. All right, over here I have 3 options, and I'm going to start building from scratch. Now over here, we'll need two rows. One will be dedicated to the WordPress menu. Let me just grab the preview really quick. So one will be dedicated to the menu in general. So we'll use a menu module for this. And then a second row, which we'll add later on, will be used to create the drop-down menu items. So let's start with the first one. And over here, I have a section. I'll need to make some changes to this section. So I'll open the section settings. And first of all, I'm going to add a white background color. Then I'll go to the design tab and I'm going to remove all default top and bottom spacing by adding 0 pixels to both options. So top and bottom over here. And then I'll go to the box shadow options. And this will just help us create a little bit of a difference between, let me just grab the preview over here so we can switch between both to have just a little bit of a drop down box shadow over there. So let me just add a box shadow, pretty subtle. Let me just change this to 50 pixels, for instance, and I'll also decrease the opacity. So you're free to tweak these values however you want. So again, we're first creating the menu bar. And now we can add our row. So we'll need one column only for our row. And before adding any modules, I'm going to open the row settings, and in the sizing settings, I'm going to enable custom gutter width. I'll place this to 1, and I'm also increasing the max width of my row. This will just allow the row to take more place up on larger screen sizes. And then in the spacing settings, I'm going to add some custom top and bottom padding. So I'll use 10 pixels for both options over here. So now that the row settings are in place, I can add a menu module over here. So let me just add a menu module. Let me just see if you guys are still following along. I just want to check if the connection is working properly. Seems like it is. All right, cool. And over here, you'll have to select the menu that you've modified in the first part of this tutorial. So right now, that's the correct one for me. I only have one menu on my website, so it's automatically selecting that one. And I'm also going to add a logo. Then I'll go to the menu text settings over here in the design tab, and I'm going to change the menu font into Lato. I'll use a menu font weight. I'm gonna use something a little bit lighter for my menu text color. I'm gonna make sure this is uppercase as well. I'll shrink the size of my font a little bit and increase the letter spacing to 3. And I'll also make sure that the text alignment is set to right. So let me make this just a little bit darker. All right, looks good. And over here in the drop-down menu settings, I'll need to make some changes as well. And first of all, I'm going to use a white background color for my drop-down and a completely transparent line color. So this will just prevent a line from showing up at the top of the drop-down. So if you're familiar with the menus inside Divi, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, you can just experiment with these colors, but since we're recreating the exact same menu, we'll just use a completely transparent color there. And let me just grab the color code for the mobile menu background color really quick. So this is the one that we're using. It's a kind of grayish color, and we'll use a black menu text color along with a black drop-down menu text color over here. All right, so these are the settings that we need for the drop-down menu. And then we'll go to the icons settings, and over here we'll use the color that comes, kind of pinkish color that's typical to elegant themes. Let me grab the color code. Here we go. And we'll also use a black color for the other two icons, which aren't part of the menu, but we're just styling them in case any one of you guys would need them. All right, and over here in the sizing settings, we're going to slightly shrink the size of our logo to 64 pixels. So that looks better right there. So we have a basic menu set up right now. And now we can focus on the next part of this tutorial, which is creating the drop-down menus. And as mentioned before, we'll do that using Divi's built-in modules, mainly blurb modules and also a text module. And then afterwards, we'll use those blurb modules and place them within the menu item of our choice using some custom code, which you just have to copy and paste. So I do want to ask you guys, if you're following along, to go to the blog post in the description below, and over there, just keep it close by so you can read off some settings, follow along so you understand the tutorial, and also copy the code once we're there. All right, so now this part is finished. As mentioned before, I'm going to dedicate an entire new row to all of the drop-down elements. Now we're recreating 3 different drop-down menus, so we'll use a row with 3 columns. All right. Now before we add the modules, I'm going to open the sizing settings of my row, and I'll enable use custom gutter width, place this to 1, modify the sizing, and these are actually some settings that I'm using just to get a view on how my drop-down menus will look. So afterwards, these will be taken out of their container and placed within the menu, but it will give us a better view on the items because we'll place them next to each other. So you'll notice as we're moving further along this tutorial. So over here in the row settings, I'm also going to remove all default top and bottom padding that's included in this row. So this row later on will be hidden entirely. And that's why I'm making sure that the space that's taken up by this row is minimal by removing the top and bottom default padding, for instance. And then over here in the advanced tab, I'm going to give my row a CSS class. It says drop-down menu row. So again, you can find that in the blog post as well if you're not sure if you're writing the CSS class exactly the way it should be written. So you can always go back to the blog post and make sure that your classes are correct if something's not functioning. And for each one of the different columns, we'll also need to assign a CSS class. The CSS class that we'll assign will be the same for each one of them. Drop-down menu column. And I also want to mention that you can find a free JSON file with some instructions on how to install it on your website in the blog post. So you can just download the JSON file and get started with it. But you'll have to go through some small steps to make it functional on your website as well. But those are all mentioned in the blog post. All right, now that we have the general settings in place, we can start adding modules. So this technique works on any kind of drop-down that you want to create, right? We're recreating the Elegant Themes drop-down menu, but you can use any kind of module you want. You can place anything you want as long as you're limiting one drop-down to one column. So that's a very important part. Everything you want to fit within your drop-down has to be part of one column. So we are going to use blurb modules for this. And I'll start by adding the first one. And as soon as I finish the first one, I'll also be able to reuse that module. using Divi's clone option and make some changes here and there. And let me just add some copy over there. So this is the copy that I'm adding. I'm also using an icon instead of an image. It doesn't really matter what I'll add here. So you'll be able to modify these however you want, and they will appear exactly that same way within your drop-down menu. Also, don't forget to add a link to the blurb module and all the items you add. So one blurb module represents one menu item, and you'll definitely have to change all of the links to the proper pages you want the menu item to redirect to. All right, now over here in the icon settings, I'm just going to grab that color code really quick. So it's a purple kind of color that I'll be using. But again, you're free to customize this however you want. Let me just paste all the settings over here. So this is the color code that we're using for the icon color. We're also placing it on the left side, and we're using a custom font size, which is 30 pixels. Then I'll go to the title text settings. Let me just grab this color code here. And over here, I'll make some changes. I'll change the font to Lato. So these settings are, almost exactly identical to the settings that are used within the Elegant Themes website. But you're free to customize this however you want to make it unique to your own website. Over here, I'll enable uppercase. I'll use the same color for the title text. I'll shrink the text size. And I'll use 2 pixels for the title letter spacing. And then the body text settings, I'm going to use Lato as well. And I'll also make sure that in the sizing settings, the content width is set to 100%. So that'll just make sure that it takes up the entire width of the container is placed in. Now over here in the spacing settings, I'll just add some custom spacing values that are tweaked for different screen sizes. So 15 pixels for top and bottom, and 6% for left and right on desktop. On hover, we're slightly changing this. We're using 8% for the left and 4% for the right side. And on tablet, we're using 7 pixels for the top and bottom, and 2% for the left and the right side. And on mobile, we're using 3% for the left and the right side. So these are just values that work really well with the different screen sizes and with the mobile experience that we have of the menus. So over here, this change in hover is just allowing us to have this kind of effect on hover, if you can see it on the screen. All right. Then we'll go to the animation settings, and by default, a blurb module has this kind of icon animation going on, and we're just going to remove it to avoid having distractions. And in the advanced tab, we'll also use a CSS class for the module. So each and every module that you want to place within your dropdown will need the CSS class. It says dropdown menu item. And this will just help with the code later on. So it will help us detect what we want to place within the dropdown. And since we're using a blurb module, we're also changing the cursor into pointer. That will just help people understand that they can click on a certain item in the drop-down menu. And that's why we're changing the cursor. All right, so now that we have the first module in place, we can clone it up to as many times as we want. Let me just use 4. And of course, you will need to modify the copy, the icon, and the link, also very important, of each and every duplicate. And you can also create something else. So for instance, over here, we have a different kind of blurb going on. You can modify this however you want. So we'll use one cloned blurb module to make some changes over here. Let me just add a background color. I'm also going to modify the colors of my icon. Let me just grab those colors really quick for you guys. Over here in the image and icon settings, I'm going to change the size of my icon as well to 22 pixels. So these are kind of, I wouldn't say less important, but less highlighted. I've also changed the color code into the following one on the screen. But again, you can find all of the color codes, all of the settings, the JSON file, and the code in the blog post mentioned in the description below. So definitely check that out. And I'm also going to match this with the title text color of my icon over here. And I'll just slightly shrink the text size to 14 pixels. And again, make sure that you change all of the content and the links. Now over here, let me just go back to the preview on smaller screen sizes. If I just inspect the element over here, you can notice that we have only 4 items, so blurb items showing up in our menu. And the reason for that is because we don't want to overwhelm the visitors on smaller screen sizes, and you can easily hide an item on smaller screen sizes by going to the advanced tab, the visibility settings, and hiding them on both options. All right, so now you can reuse this as many times as you want. Again, make sure that you change the contents and the links. Now, the last module we're using over here is a text module, and we're actually using this module as a button. Now, the reason why we're using a text module instead of a button is because of the way that the elements are structured. So the HTML elements, I believe in a button module, you have a little bit more nesting going on with divs, and in a text module, you can easily adapt to a new environment. So that's why we're using a text module instead. I'm just going to add some copy over here. I'll just use a background color as well. And then in the design tab, I'm going to use Lotto bold for the font weight. I'll enable uppercase. I'll use a white text color, 3 pixels for the letter spacing, and I also will align this to center over here at the bottom of the settings. And then in the spacing settings, I'm going to add some top margin 20 pixels, some bottom margin as well, 20 pixels again, 4% for the left and 4% for the right side. And then I'll also add some top and bottom padding, which is 15 pixels for both options. And then we'll add some rounded corners to our text module, or in this case, kind of looks more like a button module at this point. So I'll just add 100 pixels to each one of the corners, along with a box shadow. Let me grab those color codes really quick. So we have this kind of hover effect going on. So as soon as someone hovers it, it's extra emphasized. So we're using 14 pixels for the vertical position. We're selecting the first option over here. We're using a completely transparent shadow color in a default state, and we'll change the color to this color code on hover. Now over here in the preview, you can also notice that this goes up a little bit. To do that, we'll just use the transform settings over here. Transform translate will enable the hover option. We'll make sure that these two aren't linked, and we'll place this to -3. So if I switch between these, you can see the effect happen. And again, we'll make sure that this has a CSS class. So the same CSS class as the blurred modules. Drop down menu item. And in the main elements, we're using cursor pointer as well, just to make sure that, you know, people are able to detect that they can click on something. All right, so now that we have the first column in place, we can easily reuse this. I'll just delete these two columns over here in my row, and I'm going to clone all of them. And now you can modify these new drop-down menus however you like. So again, these are all placed in one column. So for each drop-down that you need, you'll need a new column in the same row. That column needs to contain the CSS class. So it's the same CSS class for each and every column. And they also need to be in order. So if you want to add a drop down to the first menu item that you've modified in the first part of this tutorial, so the one that you've added the CSS classes to, you'll have to place that in column 1. For the second one, you'll have to place that in column 2. For the third, in column 3, if that makes sense. So we're following this kind of structure where everything gets automatically placed in the right place as long as you follow the logical order, if that makes sense. All right. So I'll just take a quick look to see if you guys have any questions so far. And then I can continue with the next part of this tutorial. So someone's asking, what if I want to add custom drop-down sidebar menu on my blog post? It should not contain all, should not replace the header menu. So you can use a custom header for that. So you don't have to go for a global header, and you'll be able to use this technique, but I will definitely make sure that I cover something similar with blog categories or with, like e-commerce category drop-down menus in future tutorials. So I'm working on those, and these will definitely be included on the blog very soon, and hopefully with videos as well. All right, so I don't see any more questions. I see people are following along. Please, if you do have questions, leave a comment on YouTube or on Facebook. All right, so the next part is adding the code. And to add the code, we'll use a code module, but you can place it inside of the Divi theme options as well. I personally like to opt for code modules because it helps me keep code organized where I'm working. And over here, I'll just add it to the first row, and I'll start with the CSS code. Again, you can find this in the blog post, which is mentioned in the description below. So over there, you can just grab all of the settings first of all, and then the CSS code, which will work no matter what kind of drop-down menu you're creating, as long as you use the same CSS classes and follow the same order. All right, so over here, I'll just place the CSS code. And I'm also going to grab the jQuery code. So this jQuery code, what this jQuery does is it takes all of these different modules and it creates a new container for them that we then place within the WordPress menu item of our choice. And this happens automatically as long as you follow the order. So this is really important for you to include this in a code module or just directly on your website. And over here, we're also going to enable a CSS class. Now, let me just save this really quick and take a quick look at the preview. Over here, also make sure that you save all theme builder changes. So over here, I had this previous menu. And did you see that flickering effect? We're going to get rid of it right away. So over here, you can see all of the drop-down menus that we've created. Let me just switch over to smaller screen sizes for you guys to see that it works really well over here as well. All right, so to prevent that flickering from happening, we are also going to enable a CSS class that's hidden in the code. So I've made sure that it's hidden before you're actually done modifying the menu items, but I see that there are some questions. I just want to address them first. Okay, so someone's asking, why not just the text module link instead of extra CSS code cursor pointer? I found it, I mean, you can go both ways. I think for me, it's better if I just add a link to the entire module. As soon as you do that, that doesn't automatically modify the cursor. So that's why I use the CSS code. But you can go the other way and just use, a link for the text that you're placing inside the module. So someone's asking, where is the code? You can find it in the blog post, which is mentioned in the description of this video that you're watching. So you can go there, and over there, everything's also explained step by step. And you can grab the CSS code or the JSON file, which you can use right away. Someone's asking, do you show the codes after class? What do you mean exactly? Because I'm not sure I understand. All right. Now, to prevent the flickering from happening, we're going to enable one CSS class. And that CSS class is within the code that you were able to copy and paste. So let me just open my header once again. So everything's functional at this point. We're just making sure that it doesn't load right away. It just loads whenever it's time. All right, so let me just open the code module, and I've placed it at the top of the code, and it also has a comment that says enable class below once you're done editing the menu. So first of all, create the drop downs, and then afterwards you can enable the CSS class. So to do that, just remove these comments, but you'll also see that the second row disappears. So as soon as you want to make additional changes, you can again, comment out this CSS class for a while until you're done, or you can just switch over to wireframe mode as well. And over here, you'll always be able to access all of the elements. But because we're in a visual builder, everything happens instantly. So that's why we'll save that part for last. Now, if I refresh this, the drop-down menus don't appear anymore. Let me do it once more. See, it just appears once we need them, which is, obviously the user experience that we want. And same on smaller screen sizes. Let me refresh this. So someone else is asking if the CSS code is available. You can find all of the code, all of the steps in the blog post, which is mentioned in the description below. So it's the first link that you'll come across. That's the tutorial. There you can copy all of the CSS and jQuery code that you need. And you can also go through everything step by step. All right. So over here, again, let me just refresh. It doesn't show up until we need it to show up, which is really cool. So now we have this kind of functional drop-down menu in place. Now, what if you want to create more than 3 drop-downs? Say you have more items. You can easily do that as well. You'll just have to follow the structure that we've been taking care of up until now. So that means that we have to go back to our menu in the appearance. Let me just save this. All right, and over here, I'm just gonna copy the CSS classes. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then we can go to the 4th, and just make sure that you change the number at the end of the 4th item you want to add a drop down to. So instead of 3, we're using 4, and we're going to save this. All right, and then we'll go to the Divi theme builder. I'm going to open the header again. I'll disable the CSS class so I can work on the front end. I'll just comment it out over here. And then I'll switch over to Visual Builder, and then I can just reuse one of my columns, or place whatever I want in this new drop down. So now I have 4 of them. 2 important things to mention: the column CSS class has to be the same one, and the column has to contain the CSS class, obviously, and all of the modules within that column have to contain this CSS class. All right, and now if I save this, just want to preview it for you guys. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 in total. And again, I'm going to enable the CSS class over here to make sure that there's no unnecessary loading when someone enters the page. So here we go. And that's how you add a 4th one as well. And you can go on and on, just like that. Just make sure that you follow the order in which you place them in. All right, here we go. I'll just take one more final look to see if you guys have any questions. Someone's asking, does Stephen, I think it is, does this work as a mega menu? If so, how many levels and columns are possible? In one of, I wouldn't say one of the next tutorials, but I'm working on a tutorial where, for instance, we're going to take an entire row and place it inside a menu item. So there are different ways to approach it. And each one of them has, a different technique that I can't just explain right now. So definitely keep an eye on the blog and on the YouTube channel, and we'll definitely go more in depth. So you'll be able to add rows inside a certain menu item, tweak them, add whatever kind of modules you want inside that row, and style these according to the different screen sizes, and just have this really good experience for you and for all of your visitors. So if you guys don't have any more questions, I don't think there are, but quite some people joined in. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and we hope that you're enjoying this ongoing Divi design initiative where we try to put something extra into your design toolbox each and every week. We'll hopefully see you next week with another use case live stream. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.